Good morning. I'm so glad you're here today. I picked out a book for you to read that I hope you will enjoy. It's called The Shepherd, the Angel, and Walter the Christmas Miracle Dog. This story is told by a 12 or 13-year-old boy about his family and the town where he lives. And I think you will find it enjoyable because I tried to pick one out that's not too hard because English is not your first language. But this is a story I think you can relate to because he talks about his family and his brother and sister and the Christmas pageant that they have every year. Now, it's the first Christmas you've lived in the United States, isn't it?
Yes.
So that's why I picked a book that doesn't have too many cultural references, and I think you will be able to understand it. There are some things in here that I want to make sure you understand because of the vocabulary. One is that it refers to a Christmas pageant. The children play characters in a Christmas pageant. Do you know what a pageant is, or a play or a story being acted out?
I know story, but I'm not sure about first word.
Like an actor?
Actor, I know.
Okay. And you and I went to a Christmas pageant with the children portraying the Christmas story, and so you've seen that, right? Mm-hmm. That's a big factor in this book, is the Christmas pageant. He refers to 2 different years of the Christmas pageant. Mm-hmm. He also talks about his friends, and he's starting to get old enough to be interested in some of the girls at his school. Mm-hmm. So you may be able to relate to some of that when you were starting to notice the boys at your school when you were going to school in Russia. Also, he talks about the family pet, the dog. And I know that you're very tender-hearted toward animals, so that's another reason I thought you might like this story. Beside the word pageant, there were some other things that I might want to go over with you and make sure you will recognize these vocabulary words when you get to them in the book. Do you know what a treehouse is?
Yes.
Okay. There's actually a picture of the treehouse in here. I had marked this to show you what a treehouse was in case you were not familiar with that. It's a playhouse for children in a tree. Also, there's a reference in here, and it's a pretty important part of the story, that there are a lot of bats living in the top of this church. Do you know what bats are?
Bats?
Bats.
Not sure.
Okay. They look like birds, but they're actually mammals. And they fly, but they usually come out at night. So during the day, they find a place to sleep during the day. Sometimes in a cave.
I think
No, not owls. These are smaller than owls usually, and they're mammals. And they live in big groups called colonies, and they always live in big groups, and they always try to go back to the same place every morning to go back to sleep during the day. So these animals, if they live in a building, cause a big problem for the people that use the building because they poop a lot. So the bats pooping in a big pile is important in this story also. And the other thing that may not be as familiar to you because you've not been in this culture since July is that we have several Christian denominations. There are several churches that are Christian churches, but they have different beliefs and different ways of worship. In this story, the Methodists, the Episcopalians, and the Catholics all have churches located nearby, and all of the students go to school together. But sometimes in church settings, even though they're all Christian churches, sometimes there are heated conflicts, sometimes there's even violence. And that probably is not true where you're from. The Russian Orthodox Church is the main church where you are, and there's probably not, we call it sectarian fighting because it's a sect of Christianity, and they argue with each other and sometimes physically fight with each other. And that's also important in this story. So what I would like to do now is I have previewed this story a little bit to help you understand some of the words I thought you might not be familiar with. And I think you will be able to relate to the story because it talks about growing up and the friends that from school and being in a pageant. I know you're interested in acting, and you were very good at that in school, were you not? You were a good actress when you were in school?
Yes, it was.
Yes. All right, so what I'm going to ask you to do now is to read this book, and then after you are finished reading it, I'm going to ask you to summarize it, and I'm going to ask you some questions to make sure that you were able to comprehend what you read and understand what you read. Will you agree to do that for me?
Yes.
Good.
I agree.
Thank you very much for being here today, and I will look forward to checking back with you when you finished your reading.
Thank you, Mr. McDougall.
we're back, and you've been learning about Dave Barry's book, The Shepherd, the Angel, and Walter the Christmas Dog. I wanted to ask you some questions to see if you were able to understand the story that you read. The story was narrated by a boy named Doug. Who were the members of Doug's family?
Doug has mom, dad, sister, and brother.
Good. And how did Doug and his friends act when they were practicing for the play that they ran, the pageant?
Oh, they did not so good, even bad. They did not follow instruction and did not good all the time.
Good. Yes, that's right. And their dog that the family had as a pet was Frank, an older dog, and he was getting very old. Why was the family worried about the effect of Frank's impending death on their daughter Becky, the sister of Doug?
Yes, his family did not want to say back about this because she was a big friend with dog and worry about this.
Yes.
The reason they did not want to say.
Good, that's right. And then at the end of the story, the dog did die, but they got a new dog named Walter. How did they get Walter?
When they took that old dog to shelter, and there was one new dog, and he jumped to their car, and parents decided to leave him for
Good. Yes, that's right.
This boy.
Yes. And then something happened at the church during the pageant. What happened at the church?
In the church. It happened something with ceiling collapse.
Yes.
Collapsed.
During the pageant.
Yes.
Good. Very good.